Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Cantey, and this is another episode of Living Enlightened Every Day. And today we are exploring and questioning the idea of forgiveness and freedom, surrender and releasing, letting go. What does it all mean? Where does it all lead? And how do we get there? Let's explore. And so before we begin, as always, I'm going to invite you to just check in with yourself and just inquire, where are you? How are you? Who are you being? As you listen to this discussion on forgiveness, surrender, release, letting go, all of these things we're going to explore because there's some myths about this. I'm going to begin by reading this quote from A Course in Miracles. It says, "What could you want that forgiveness cannot give? Do you want peace? Forgiveness offers it. Do you want happiness? A quiet mind, a certainty of purpose, and a sense of worth and beauty that transcends the world? Do you want care and safety and the warmth of sure protection always? Do you want a quietness that cannot be disturbed, a gentleness that cannot be hurt? All of this forgiveness offers you and more. It sparkles in your eyes as you awake and gives you joy with which to meet the day. It soothes your forehead while you sleep and rests upon your eyelids, so you see no dreams of fear and evil, malice and attack. And when you awake again, it offers you another day of happiness and peace. All this forgiveness offers you and more." Well, who doesn't want that? Honestly, that is all of that beautifully, poetically written is what we're all searching for all the time, that release of stress, that release of unpleasant feelings that raise our blood pressure and make us feel in our bodies very tense. They make us feel in our memories very unhappy, all of those things. So we're told in every mystic tradition, in every religion, on every spiritual path, that forgiveness is a way to freedom. And yet many of us have this very skewed idea of forgiveness. So, according to my Wikipedia, forgiveness is the renunciation or cessation of resentment, indignation, or anger as a result of a perceived offense, disagreement, mistake, or ceasing to demand punishment or restitution. Hmm. Now that's very interesting. As I said, forgiveness is a practice in every religion, mystic tradition, and spiritual path. And it's often easier said, of course, than done. But when we stand in the truth of our being, we activate forgiveness. And this allows us to see past events and circumstances with a clarity and a perspective of wholeness that we could never see while we're holding on to anger, hatred, frustration. Forgiveness is really the act of letting go of the ego's judgments, attachments, and reactions to situations, events, and circumstances of our life. It is freedom. We become free to live in the light of peace and compassion. We begin to live without the constraints of our judgments, of our memories, of what people or situations or events have done to us. And instead, we rest in this powerful place of being completely whole and present and empowered right now in this moment. In my last talk, I spoke about being 100% responsible for our lives, for our ability to be who and what and how we wish to be in any given circumstance. Well, as we are attached to our judgments and our anger and our resentments about past situations, events, and circumstances, we are not free. So forgiveness is freedom. As we grow in consciousness, it's interesting that forgiveness can be easier and easier, or it may be that one giant boulder that stands in our way. Just as our conscious awareness of oneness, of wholeness and unity continually expands and unfolds, so too does our understanding and our abilities and our need for forgiveness. We may need to practice forgiveness many times over and over until we get to that place where we feel only love and peace and compassion in our hearts and minds. It's interesting that when asked how many times we must forgive, Jesus answered 70 times 7. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a forgiveness practice. Because forgiveness is like the lotus flower. It's constantly changing and unfolding. We may need to forgive once, we may need to forgive 70 times 7. We think, wait, I've already worked on this. I've already forgiven that person or that situation, that event. I have already forgiven myself, forgiven God for doing that to me. I've worked on this. But as our understanding evolves, this sense or idea of forgiveness evolves. And there's layers to forgiveness. Whenever we are bothered or disturbed by the thoughts or memories of a past event, it is just a signal. It's like, wait, pay attention. There's something here for you to look at, to explore, to be curious about. Sometimes the word forgiveness itself is a trigger because we have so many misperceptions around forgiveness. And even though we think we intellectually understand the idea of forgiveness, these misperceptions are built into us almost always by the way we grew up, our parents, our religion, different ways that we learned to understand forgiveness, of course, as we were a child. But we know it's a time to practice forgiveness when we recall an event, a relationship, or a situation, and we still feel anger or resentment. We feel, the blood pressure rising, the tension creeping in. We find ourselves raising our voice or telling the story to someone, and we're becoming very passionate about it. Guess what? We are reliving that event. We have not completely released that event. It is in this moment not allowing us to be wholly, completely free. So here's the thing, we never want to sweep our emotions under that proverbial rug. We want to acknowledge this anger or resentment as it comes up. We want to work through it. We want to investigate and process and heal. And I use the word erase them. We want to erase them. And the first time I saw this as a visual was in the Joe Dispenza week-long advanced retreat. And he has this graphic of our neural pathways and these, I guess, neurons. And he shows a picture of, these attached things to the neurons. And that is our memory. That's the pathway that our memory goes. And it's like every time I think of this event, I get angry. Every time I think of this event, my blood pressure rises. Or conversely, when we have an event happen right now in this present moment, that may be a sort of a mild event, something that would normally not really bother us, because it startles us or because it it's activating that neural pathway. We go back to a previous event where we're angry and upset, where someone betrayed us, where someone did something to us. So it works in this circuit. And it was beautiful the way he reminded us that to get to that point where we are free from that neural pathway, we have to unplug from those neurons, from those memories. And again, it's when we can recall a memory and we know, yes, that happened to me. Yes, that person did that. And I was incapable of defending myself. This happened, that happened. We can acknowledge the facts, we can acknowledge the history, but we don't have to relive it in our emotional life, in our body. We can allow our body to release that pathway, that neural pathway. Forgiveness restores our ability to see that big picture again, like it described in that quote from A Course in Miracles. When we've done this, we forgive, and the big picture is seeing the gifts in painful events, in untenable circumstances, to see wholeness where before there was fragmented pieces that led to that fragmented sense of self, that fragmented sense of peace, or the fragmented sense of safety and clarity. I've found in my work that there are very uh, common misperceptions around forgiveness. And number one, forgiveness is never condoning what someone has done. It's never about saying what they did was okay. It's so far removed from them. It has nothing to do with them, the personality. It has to do with us being free from that neural circuit of anger, of hatred, of not being able to live where we would like to live in peace and love and joy and harmony with what is going on right now in our lives. It's freedom from being dragged back into that event or that circumstance or that relationship. It reminds me that quote from Martin Luther King: returning hate for hate multiplies hate. He said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So we are loving ourselves enough to set ourselves free. So forgiveness never condones, has nothing to do with what anyone has done. It's not about them, it's about our freedom. Forgiveness doesn't free someone else. It doesn't free them because we're free. Doesn't make them free. They could be in the prison of their own making, or they could be sitting on a beach in Kauai. Who the heck knows? But while we're sitting in anger or resentment, we are the one who is not free. We don't free them. We don't have that capability for any other human being. They are on their own life journey. It frees us. We cannot experience our wholeness, our oneness, while we're bound to our anger and our resentment. We cannot serve two masters. Forgiveness frees us to live how we wish to live. Forgiveness doesn't mean in any way, shape, or form that we have to participate with that person in any capacity. It doesn't mean that we have to fix a relationship or that we're obligated to participate in a relationship. It's for our freedom, our spiritual and personal freedom. And as we forgive, we are better able to discern what kind of relationships we will or won't have with people from our past and people who walk into our lives right now. We have a new perspective. We can discern healthy boundaries with others and maintain our state of personal freedom to be loving and kind and compassionate with those who we choose to be that way with. We become stronger, we gain clarity as to what our boundaries are and what we will participate in our personal relationships. And as strange as it sounds, this comes up all the time. We don't need someone to be sorry for what they've done for us to be free from what they've done. We don't need their participation. We don't need their agreement that they've done anything wrong. We don't need their sorrow. We don't need their uh, anything, nothing at all from anyone. We are sovereign beings. We can choose to be in a state where nothing can move us off our center. And that includes our memories of some other person or some other event or some other circumstance. We can be free for ourselves, and it has nothing to do with how or if the other person participates or doesn't. Some people will never realize the pain that they have caused or inflicted. Some people are incapable of understanding or even acknowledging a fact about how they have participated in something. And just as we are bound by our actions and our neural pathways, as we are bound by this law of cause and effect, so too are they bound. Our concern is not with their freedom or enlightenment, it's just with our own. When we will not forgive, we're planting those seeds into the law of cause and effect, and we reap what we sow, just as they are bound by what they have sown. We don't need to know about it. We don't need to worry about it. And we don't need to be upset by our memories of our past. We can forgive because we value, above all else, our freedom, not because the other person deserves it. And of course, freedom is not forgetting. It doesn't mean we forget. I mean, there are things we will never forget. Time will never heal. But when we remember and relive from this place of this ego perspective, we are disempowered by the situation. We are subject to pain, grief, sorrow, tension, uh, heartache, high blood pressure, all of those things we're doing to ourselves in our environment. No one is doing it to us now. It is being relived by us now. It is a choice. Doesn't mean we should forget it. We can't. But we can be free from it. If we can remember a situation and we are reliving it as painful, as upsetting, as angry, and our body is out of control, we are empowering the situation from those neural pathways. We re-feel it in our bodies as if it were happening right now. Our minds are so creative and so powerful. It doesn't know that we're thinking about something from the past. We're bringing that into our present moment, and our body is experiencing it right now in this moment. We are shaking, we are fearful, we are contracted, we are angry, upset, and resentful. Toxins are released into our bloodstream, and anxiety and stress are just pulsating through our body. It's time to remember that forgiving is not forgetting, but it's releasing all of that so that we can be in the present moment for what is now. present in this moment. As we remember or recognize the situation from this state of freedom, that pain diminishes. And Joe Dispenza had that incredible graphic of these connectors disengaging, and we can place new neurons there, new connectors that say, yes, that happened. I can tell you about it, but I don't have to relive it. I don't have to become absorbed in the emotional, mental anguish that it caused me. I love this quote from Khalil Gibran. He said, I have learned silence from the talkative, tolerance from the intolerant, kindness from the unkind. Yet, strange how I am ungrateful to these teachers. Forgiveness brings this interesting perspective to what is happening around us. That shift in perspective that allows us to fully embrace all of our teachers. Because when we embrace those teachers, we are embracing our wholeness. We don't have to squish or squash anything. We don't sweep it under the rug. We can identify it. We say, this is a fact of me, but it doesn't run me. It doesn't make me feel bad because I can take 100% responsibility for my life, how I feel in this moment. I just want to touch on the idea of forgiving the unforgivable. What do we do when someone doesn't deserve our forgiveness? Well, that's what I hear all the time. And again, we are exploring the idea of forgiveness from a new perspective. That really what we're talking about is freeing ourselves separate from anything about this other person. So we're not focusing on forgiving them. We're not focusing on giving them anything. We're not focusing on their freedom. We're not focusing on right or wrong, good or bad, punishment or unpunished, whatever that situation created is within us now. And we are the only ones with the power to be free while allowing ourselves the grace to acknowledge what happened. And just one example I often think of is Nelson Mandela. And he said, as I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew that if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison. And when our story, our identity is wrapped up in trauma, the ego wants to continue the story. And in effect, it continues the trauma so that we don't forget, so that we stay on high alert, so that we can be safe. It is trying to keep us safe. And we can thank it and bless it, saying, yes, well, I get what you're doing. I'm with you. I want to keep this body in this container safe. But we can clearly see the flaw in the ego mind thinking. When we relive trauma, and we work hard to stay safe by putting up walls and believing that we have to protect ourselves all the time from something that happened to us in our past. We're planting those seeds into the creative soil of life, and we recreate over and over that feeling of being unsafe, unhappy, traumatized. Being on continual alert keeps our body and mind and emotion in crisis over and over again. We are in that parasympathetic nervous system, which we know the damage that that does. And we perpetuate that cycle of fear and pain. So when we get to that place where we're just done, we've had enough, and we're ready to break through from that cycle of pain, anger, and resentment, it's this quest for freedom that allows us to rest in love, surrounded by our inner peace, our inner safety, our inner sense of wholeness. We reconnect with that. We don't need anything out there to make us feel whole. We feel it from within. We sense it from within when we have released the blocks to it. And sometimes when an injustice or abuse is so deep and so profound, we start just with the beginning, the willingness to be free. We don't even have to use, I don't in my counseling, use the words forgiveness. It's like, be willing to be free. Are you willing to be free? Are you willing to find within you, again, no mention of the past, right now, your sense, your knowing freedom, your knowing safety, your knowing self love, you're knowing this sense of yourself as expanded, bigger than anything that has ever happened to you. We are bigger than anything that has happened to us that could ever happen to us. Our love, our joy, our consciousness, our awareness can hold and love and dissolve in love anything that has ever caused us harm or endangered us in any way. With our willingness to be free, we become stronger and we have a greater capacity for clarity, compassion, and understanding. Compassion is that conviction of our divinity in action. It's our conviction that there is something bigger, our love, our joy, our peace, this divine understanding is in action when we don't understand it at all. We begin to sense that for ourselves. When we sense it for ourselves, we have that ability to see the divine in the other, in the situations, events, and circumstances for ourselves and in the world. There is a great sense of harm being done in the world right now. And rather than being angry and resentful about it, we begin to see from a place of love and compassion. What do you think has more impact, not only on your world, which is your body, your state of affairs, your relationships, the events that occur in your daily life, but in the world at large? Love, joy, peace, and compassion, or anger, hatred, and resentment? So we start to take what we have on this personal scale of self love, self compassion, freedom, and we begin to be able to see beyond, expand beyond ourselves, and see into the world from that place of love and compassion. So truly, we can step away from the word forgiveness and its triggers, or we can jump into a greater understanding of the word and how we use it in spiritual practice or religions or in the mystic traditions. We can, shift either way, but any way we do, we are going to be and feel the wholeness that we are. The power and presence is not blocked by a memory. And that is true freedom. So I invite you this week to explore those, I think, 5 ideas, the misunderstandings, the misconceptions that we have around forgiveness. Have you been misled by any of those perceptions? Are you feeling trapped by an identity with some past trauma or past events? It's a great time to explore the question, am I willing to be free this week? Am I willing to be whole this week? I hope this conversation has enlightened you a little bit around the ideas around forgiveness and freedom and feeling empowered. We can live in freedom all the time. We are free to be our authentic selves, not bound by fear, blame, judgment, or resentment. And I think next week we're going to talk about self forgiveness. That's a big one. So if this video has helped you in any way, please hit the like button and I invite you to subscribe. We talk about these concepts and more. I talk about them in my book, Living Enlightened, The Joy of Integrating Spirit, Mind, and Body. It's available at Amazon. I talk about it with the many guests that I bring on. And we explore these principles that are so practical in loving our lives and living our passion, being free to be ourselves. So this week, I just invite you to do that. Love, laugh, and live enlightened every single day. Live in freedom.